Leandro Segovia here, and I want to talk to you about a charity I support, and that is the Shadow Warriors Project. It's a foundation dedicated to support of private military service contractors conducting paramilitary security operations in some of the world's most dangerous areas. It's the only charity of its kind. Created by Mark Geist, a private security contractor who was injured while protecting the people inside the CIA security annex from a terror attack on September 12, 2012, his injuries prevented him from being able to return to work, which made it difficult to provide for his family. Because of the red tape, financial struggles, and little to no support for the men in this line of work, he was passionate about finding a way to help ease the load from already heavy shoulders. The individuals receiving support from the Shadow Warriors Project are special operatives that were hired either through the CIA or via private security companies. These people are in real need of assistance because there is no post-engagement support for them on their return to the US like there is for military veterans. The goal of the Shadow Warriors Project is to serve as a support system to the injured warrior and or their family. Your donation gives financial assistance to warriors and their families in need. To find out more and see how you can help, go to shadowwarriorsproject.org. That's shadowwarriorsproject.org.
You're listening to The Andre Segovia Show.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to The Andre Segovia Show. I'm your host, Andre Segovia. Today, joining me are the authors of the new book, Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy, A Cold Case Investigation. Sarah Adams and Dave Benton are the authors, and it's a printout of the book because it just launched. But folks, thank you so much for coming on the program. Good to have you on.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
For my audience who may or may not know who you are, can you please let them know who you are and what your profession is?
Sure. Dave Boon, Benton. Got about 26 years of experience in the arena. Started with the military. Then I ended up being a law enforcement SWAT officer. Then I ended up going to the State Department's Diplomatic Security Service. And then I ended up doing 12 years with the CIA.
Hi, I'm Sarah Adams. After college, I joined the CIA. I was a human targeter. Then I was there for about a decade. I was recruited out of the CIA and I joined the Select Committee on Benghazi. So that was the one run by Congressman Trey Gowdy. And then now I work for the Department of Defense and I work on like research and development efforts. So kind of in the IT space.
Human targeter, for those who may not be familiar with that, because the first thing that jumps out at me is the character of Carrie Matheson from Homeland, if you're familiar with that. Is that along the lines of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so Carrie Matheson was a case officer, but it is pretty much my favorite TV show. So I love Homeland and Alex Yanza. Yay. But yeah, so actually the best description of it, if you're going to watch like a show, is Zero Dark 30. So Maya in Zero Dark 30 was a targeter. So that's what targeters mostly get known for, capturing and detaining terrorists or putting them on the X. But targeters also go and find the individuals the U.S. government needs to recruit to collect information from. So that could be scientists, diplomats. I mean, it could be in any field. It's just where the U.S. has gaps in intelligence.
Understood. Okay. And I don't want to be remiss if I don't mention this note. You mentioned something on the American Outdoors News podcast that I actually took issue with. You said the new Gen CIA is better than you are. And I dare say, I don't think you could replace on the ground experience, because I think that's what you probably have a leg up on them. So I think you're being a little too modest.
You know, the thing I love about this new generation is they really know how to use open source and technology. And we could hardly even get technology in the building, and they're just doing just amazing things with it. So I'm really excited for the future.
Oh, all right. Well, still, I would say that your knowledge is valuable. So I'm sure some of them will still look to you.
I agree with you, Andre.
Thanks.
We work together on this.
Yes. And Boon, you didn't mention it, but it's kind of like the overtone on all this. You're one of the original 6 GRS guys at the annex that this whole political football kind of it's blown over. You're one of the 6 guys that were on the ground there, basically Alamo 2012.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah, dude. Seriously, hats off to you. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the movie portrayed you as a sharpshooter or a sniper.
It portrayed me as many things, to include being 6'4" and Caucasian. But yes.
But he's actually an excellent sniper, so that is a fact. He was a Marine sniper.
A Marine sniper, yeah. And I do have to ask this because it's kind of movie related. The actor who plays you, that was David Denham. Did he able to? Did he have access to you to portray you as best possible on the screen?
No, I continued to work for the agency until 2016, so I had nothing to do with the movie, or I would have used Jason Momoa. But David did a good job of capturing the mannerisms, if you will. And I believe he got a lot of that from the guys, because I believe Tonto, Tig, and Oz were actually technical advisors for the movie. So they did a good job with that.
But there is one funny thing. We were invited down to Miami, and Michael Bay invited us down to watch the movie. And so David was there, and we met him, and he came up to Boon and he said, "They told me that you were a heavy set and they made me gain 30 pounds. You're like smaller than me." So he was all frustrated. He had to gain weight for the movie. It made me laugh.
Well, they were just hazing him then.
Yes, that probably was a Tonto thing, because Tonto's so thin that he doesn't know the size of other people.
I believe that. And speaking to that, like the whole Tonto and Boon thing was, they showed you the camaraderie between both of you was more so than the others, kind of like their groups. But you were portrayed more as a thinker, kind of like a philosopher, the reader, not the one wasting his time on video games. How accurate was that?
Well, that was maybe 50% accurate.
Well, he spends 90% of his time on video games still to this day.
We all played video games. It's just a way to kind of unwind, if you would. I do like to read, but yeah, some of the scenes where the guys are working out and I'm sitting there reading a book, that's not accurate. No.
Yeah, he would have been napping when the guys were working out, not reading a book.
Okay, all right. That makes. I had to get that out of the way because there's a lot of curious things about this, but no, it's still, all in all, I must say, because just to get the movie stuff out of the way, that might pop up a little bit as we converse, but I was actually stunned at because the way Michael Bay works, he's fast. I think the first scene that he shot with the actors who play Tonto and Boom and some of what Feb 17 guys that they run across the street was basically they were going to the consulate and they're just trying to get a vantage point that was a bust. So that was supposedly the first scene that was shot. It's like, okay, just run into this building, knock things down like you would if you're entering, you're clearing the room. So we're just going to have a camera there and kind of film it guerrilla style. So that, as I understand, was the first scene that they shot together. And it's like, so Michael Bay works furiously. That's what he's most known for. He's like, oh, he's patriotic, flag waving and all that. When I saw the movie, I thought it was something very special. I'm like, hold on, this is not a Michael Bay film. So I talked to some of my vet buddies, some of them that are cinemaphiles. I told them, hey, can you watch that and let me know? I was like, it's Michael Bay. Then they finally got around to watching it. And they told me, it's like, hats off to him. It's like, what? The tactics, the mannerisms, the body movement, everything. He was paying very close attention to that to make it as real as possible. And I think that's why the movie has a surreal feel to it, a realistic feel to it, unlike other war movies that haven't been done before it. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if that's what you got out of the film when you saw it. So
actually, I thought he did a very good job of capturing, the realities of the events over those 2 days. So my hat's off to him for that. My only real complaint was that, and I guess I understand why you can only do so much, in an hour 45 minutes. There was a lot of things that were cut out completely and not mentioned at all. But overall, no, I thought that they did very well. And I'd say it's probably like 80% accurate. So they did well.
Yeah. When I showed images, my wife, this is a shock to many that know me. My wife's the one that asks me, "Hey, what other war movie can we watch?" I'm like, what? So she's the one asking. I'm like, honey, we've seen them all, so all we can do is just watch them again. Just last night, she told me, "Hey, are we gonna watch 13 Hours again?" Believe me, we have no idea how many times we've seen it. It's tough. It's tough to watch. It's also inspiring. It's the only film that makes us feel angry, leaves us in tears, and makes us want to watch it all over again. And until recently, I'm like, you know what? This has become probably my favorite movie in that category, mostly because of it's a larger than life event that's still affecting us. And I think that's where I say it's still a political football because that's kind of why you're bringing out the book. This thing is technically nothing has been done, so to speak, in 10 years. And we'll get into it. But just to wrap up the whole thing about the movie, I think that's what made that something very special. And that's why I kind of threw it out to the ask, because I overheard in some of the making of it that there were at least 3 or 4 guys that were interviewed as technical advisors. I know 3 of them were declassified. In other words, they exposed themselves, and that was Oz, Tig, and Tonto, because I remember when they first came on with Megyn Kelly, when I sat down with Brett Baer, they did the 45-minute interview to just talk the whole thing out, because that wasn't really, no one's heard that story before from the guys that were on the ground. Everything was about the controversy regarding the stand-down order, was there, wasn't there, or whatever. And then the ultimate report that say, no, it never happened. So then eventually the book comes out a couple of years after that. There's so much there, and still is, but as the byline on your book is a cold case investigation, it sure feels like it at this point.
So, it is.
That's why I thought I'd connect that, because the movie itself, there was a lot of politics leading up to the movie's release. Because some would say, I was a movie critic, so and politics, so it's to say, there's a lot of the Clinton hands inside, or at least a lot of friends in Hollywood to them. For example, there's a made-for-TV movie called The Path to 9/11. There was a scene that was cut out, and that was with respects to the team that had eyes on Osama bin Laden in 1997, 98. This was before the embassy bombings. That clip was in it, and they were trying to make the call to the president for authorization. They couldn't. They got Sandy Berger instead. They said, okay, at least wake up the vice presidents, we could talk to them, and they didn't get anything, so they couldn't get Osama bin Laden. You can't find that movie. It was never released after its original broadcast, which was over 2 nights on ABC. It's gone. No one could see it. I downloaded it. There's ways to get it, but the point is, there were politics at play. So when this movie was going to come out, when you said they cut a lot of stuff they left out, that's why they try to make it as non-political as possible. But even so, I guess the mainstream media of the Hollywood press was panning the movie before it even came out. So when the movie came out, it's technically a box office failure. And it wasn't until after the fact, when individuals like us, because it affected me too, like, I didn't want to watch it because Michael Bay, they got to me. It wasn't until like a year or so later that I finally watched it. I'm like, how did I miss this? Then, I know why I missed it. Because they tried to destroy the film because it was coming out during a political campaign. And they thought, this is just to hurt Hillary Clinton's campaign. And I thought that was awful, because there's nothing. The only mention in the film is just like a rooftop scenes, like, hey, they're talking about some video on YouTube. I didn't hear anything about it. That's it. That's all that was mentioned. There's no politics in the film. And I think it's a shame. And that's why I think what you're doing is still super important, which is why I reached out. I was like, hey, I've seen some interviews, but I still think that there's still more to talk about this, which is why I said, I got to reach out, say, you guys come on or not. And here you are. Thank you so much. Having said that, with respects to your book, even the release of your book, there seems to be some drama behind that. The DOD kind of held your book back, right?
Yeah, well, it wasn't exactly, the DOD ended up doing it kind of quick. It's just the fact they told us we were going to get it in August, and then we got all these excuses, like the woman working it quit, the next person got COVID for 4 weeks, and they had to train someone up. So it got a little frustrating, because obviously it pushed all of our deadlines. We wanted to put it out for the 10-year anniversary. Luckily, we got it back in the DOD, very minimal redactions, so we really had no issues with the content with them. But so it was the timing thing that was difficult for us, but we're just happy it's out and we can share it now.
It was also last minute too, because we knew everything we do, even now, has to go through the agency review board. And we have no problem with that. But then last minute, after the agency said, hey, these are our redactions, we're good, all of a sudden DOD jumped in and said, hey, no, we want to look at it too. So it's a little strange.
Yeah, it almost seems like, hey, are you going to make us look bad kind of thing?
Right.
Because, Boon, I don't know, you might have seen it. I did see the Instagram account noticed a post that I put on my stories, all the books that I've read in the past 5-6 weeks. One of them was Alone at Dawn. And that's the one I said I wanted to get out of the way first, move on to the other ones. What was happening with your book kind of reminded me of what's holding back the Medal of Honor for John Chapman. because it was going to make the SEALs look bad. So I'm like, I wonder if DOD did the same things. Like, don't make us look bad. So
Right.
I'm glad they didn't really remove much of anything for the book. So that's good. But still,
yeah, and I work for the DoD, and they just are slow at everything. Honestly, my standards are like down here for the DoD. So for me, I think it was passed for the DoD. So it makes me laugh. But yes, they
government bureaucracy, right?
System,
Yeah. And with I actually pre-ordered the book about last week when I saw the post go like, oh snap, it's up. So I pre-ordered it on Amazon, and the book launched the day before we're recording this. And I still don't have word from Amazon that they're going to ship it, but now there's price gouging happening there.
Yes.
That I noticed. So it's like, okay, that I thought that was strange because I noticed it too. It's like, this is a little off, but that's as a third-party retailer. But there doesn't take much of a sleuth to realize that that's Amazon's branch out there in the UK that's doing the selling. So it's, but at least there's Barnes and Noble. So before we came on the call, because I didn't get anywhere when I'm going to receive the book, and I went back to look. It's not really showing you can buy it on hardcover right now. So it's
Right.
like, okay, I don't know what's happening with Amazon. So I ordered it also from Barnes and Noble right before we did the call, because I'm like, well, we'll see which one gets here first.
Exactly.
But I understand that this is self-published.
Correct. Yeah. We had a conversation with a couple publishers. It was more the fact, hey, you guys are doing a book on Benghazi. Here's who would put the book out, right? People were already making assumptions about it. And then we got some really weird responses. One was like, you only have an alt-right audience. And we're like, no, like people care about going after terrorists on both sides. Like, don't tell me that's political. And so we really got to the point where we're like, we don't want someone else to influence this. We just want to put out what we found, and we want to make the choice. And so that's why we chose to self-publish.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that makes total sense. There is something I wanted to show you before moving on so we can talk about the book. But I guess the question I have about the book, is it another Benghazi book, a retelling on what's happened, or we're going to learn a lot more things that we didn't know before?
So no, it's not. And that's a good question. This is not another Benghazi book. And if you look, there are a lot of books on Benghazi. Yeah. In my opinion, there's only two up until now that were really good. And that was 13 Hours and Under Fire. And the reason being 13 Hours was a perspective of a narrow perspective of just the guys on the ground and what they were going through with limited information without the totality of circumstances. And then Under Fire was the exact same way, but it was from the DSS perspective and what they went through. So both those books are written by people who are on the ground. They're very accurate, but they're narrow in focus. Our book, it focuses just on the attackers, who they were, why they actually did it, their backgrounds, where they come from, where are they now. So it really is a totally different book. It has no politics in it, although it'll upset a lot of people in politics and it'll make a lot of people look bad, but it's not a political book. It's just focused on the attackers, and that's it.
Understood. And I'm going to play a clip here. It's about 9 years ago, I think this was. Sorry if it gets under people's skins, but this is how I'm sure some people have already reacted or will react if they haven't done so already. Just give me a moment. I'm bringing it up. Okay, if you don't hear the audio, let me know.
They didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make? It is our job to figure out what happened and do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again, Senator. Now, honestly, I will do my best to answer your questions about this, but the fact is that people were trying in real time to get to the best information. The IC has a process, I understand, going with the other committees to explain how these talking points came out. But, you know, to be clear, it is, from my perspective, less important today, looking backwards, as to why these militants decided they did it, than to find them and bring them to justice. And then maybe we'll figure out what was going on in the meantime.
If you heard that, that was almost 10 years ago. Was anything ever done? Did we find out who these people were?
No, we did. We found out who they were, and actually during Hillary's time, we actually did detain a couple of the attackers. One was detained in Turkey, and one was detained in Pakistan. and she never actually requested they be rendered to the U.S. As Secretary of State. So she did have an opportunity to bring some of the attackers to the U.S. during her tenure, and she didn't. So yeah, we have identified over 100 of the attackers. FBI has really never disclosed their investigation, but we're pretty sure from the information we've gotten on the ground, FBI hasn't talked to most of the sources we talked to, and they didn't believe FBI was ever going to talk to them. So we don't think FBI really has done any sort of an effective investigation into the attacks.
No, and there have been attackers who have been killed, but when they've been killed, it wasn't because they were Benghazi attackers. And some of the time, in some of the instances, DOD didn't even know they were Benghazi attackers. They were they were targeted for another reason. So no, justice hasn't been served.
Yeah, so they were at the wrong place at the right time, basically.
Basically, yeah. Right.
And some joined other groups, right? So they were targeting, let's say, an ISIS camp, and they killed Benghazi attackers because a lot of the attackers obviously went on, joined other groups. They committed other terrorist attacks. You know, it's funny when she says, oh, we don't want to allow them to keep doing it. The attackers have killed thousands of people, right? Since the Benghazi attacks. In the last decade, they've killed thousands of people. Nobody's actually cared if they kept doing attacks, which is kind of sad, right? They just let the terrorists go be terrorists so they could, call it a protest and then never have to go after them.
Yeah, and only because I tuned into a different podcast, I got some interesting tidbits about what you said. But for those that haven't heard those and hear this for the first time, you mentioned the FBI. For a lot of us here in the States, we believe the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, is relegated to just the United States. And if they're going to look, and that's just it. How did the FBI get involved, and what were they supposed to originally do?
So when an American is actually killed overseas, it automatically becomes an FBI investigation. I'm not a fan of this. FBI obviously wasn't even stationed in Libya at the time. They had no sources, no ground experience at all in the country, like no official relationships. This is probably something really broken in our government. They do the same with hostages. When an American is taken hostage overseas, FBI becomes the primary. You had something else you wanted to say?
No, it actually should fall to the Department of State Diplomatic Security Service, not the FBI.
Yeah, that's why I found a little interesting. Like, oh, FBI got involved. Okay, yeah, because Sarah, you mentioned you arrived to Tripoli the day after, so September 13th. 2012, in local time. So this was the day after the GRS were flown out in Libyan C-130, not an American plane, but that was for, and you went there to start looking into, all right, who are these guys that came after the Americans, huh?
Well, actually, I was in Benghazi on 9/11, and I left town that day to go to a meeting in Europe. And then obviously I did my meeting and I had to come back to Libya, and there was no Benghazi annex anymore. So then I flew straight into Tripoli, and I kept working until the end of November.
What a lot of people don't realize is that Sarah's always been part of the team. She was actually there before we got there conducting operations. She was there with us and worked with us as part of the team. It's just that particular day, thank goodness, she had another meeting in another country, but she came back and then she continued to work those operations even after we were gone.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm going to ask you a few questions about your experience there from your perspective, Sarah, about the whole terrorist attack. But for my audience, I mentioned that there's whatever references I make here are available in the show notes accompanying this episode at www.thesegovia.com, including this one. She tells her side of the story with Tonto on the Battle Line podcast. They even snipped out that 46 minutes because it was, wow. It was like Tonto was hearing it for the first time too. So watching his reaction was amazing too, to just hear details that I, as someone from the outside looking in, had some idea, but hearing them verified by somebody that was on the ground or had the intel is just even more squirming. But with respects to when you left, I think you mentioned that when you were, I think it was in Europe, that you called Boon, and Boon, was it you picked up the call? Was this in between attacks or when?
It was, yes. Yep, it was.
But
So
you
he-
didn't tell. But you didn't tell her. It's like, hey, we're under attack right now. I was like, you said, no, I'm busy.
Yeah, it wasn't the appropriate time. Things were still unfolding. We did attempt to, or we planned to contact her after things settled down to make sure she didn't come back to Benghazi. But yeah, during the time, it just wasn't the right time to relay that.
Yeah. So there's something that was mentioned. I think I read this in the book as well. That the staffers at the annex downplayed the situation. Was this before the attacks, or even in between attacks? Because like, oh, see, they only hit us that one time, and it was like nothing.
No, we were actually hit 6 times, but our team leader for GRS, who was a staffer, downplayed significantly the events were going on. Why, we're not sure. But yeah, he definitely downplayed the events the entire night.
Yeah, and once everyone left like the consulate compound and came over to the CIA annex, the officer at the consulate was doing a really good job of reporting out everything going on, the DS agent. But when they moved to the annex, the CIA was not good about reporting out the ongoing attacks. They did a horrible job of sharing that with the community, and it led a lot of people to think the attacks were over.
Yeah. And that's the thing, that the whole team leader thing, and I hope I'm not asking a question that you can't answer, but as I was reading the books, like, wait, so they weren't 6 guys, there were 7? You mentioned it was a CIA staffer, but so that's why I was a little perplexed there. So this team leader, who we don't know who it is GRS but staffed by the CIA, or is a CIA that is the liaison for the GRS?
No, so GRS is actually a unit within the CIA.
Okay, well, that makes a lot more sense. But so we're not confused here, there's the team leader, which is not portrayed anywhere in the film, and then there's Bob, who was the station chief, obviously an alias, but for this individual. So a lot of our target of ire for audience is towards this Bob character. But Sarah, you even mentioned that they made him look better in the movie than he really was. Because when reading the book, I'm like, he's a little worse than they're showing. But also the team leader was the one that was kind of downplaying a lot of what's going on, and that probably contributed to not getting support for you guys. You mentioned something, Sarah, that was mind-boggling to me, because that's one detail I didn't know. I know that this whole theme is of forgotten. Americans were forgotten out there. You guys had no support, but you guys were also led to believe that Feb 17 was going to come to your aid. And Sarah, you mentioned that they knew from the onset they weren't coming.
Yeah, at least Bob did. We don't know for sure if he told their team lead, but Bob knew from his first phone call to the 17th February. They said, we're not sending you any reinforcements.
Fortunately, within GRS, we think a little differently. We have a different mindset, and we never trusted Feb 17, and we actually never wanted them to come. We even mentioned several times to both Bob and to our team leader that, hey, they're probably involved and we don't want them to come, but we were still held up because of that reason.
Yeah, and when he says they were involved, now that we've done an investigation, we have numbers, and we actually found over 30 of the terrorists at the consulate that night had been either a member of 17 February, the night of the attacks, or within the year prior to the attacks.
Wow. Now, Feb 17, there were the revolutionary militia that helped overthrow Gaddafi, was it?
Yeah, I'll kind of let Sarah go into that. They were, but it's a little more complicated than that. A lot of it's some semantics. Like, we call them revolutionaries. We call them a militia, but they were terrorists. I'll let Sarah get into more detail about that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of militias set up during that time. Some were set up, to honor different people in the past. Some were set up just by different terrorist groups that put them together. Some were members. They were all in the same prison together, and they created militias. So the militias were all over the board, right? You had far extreme Islamists, and then you had, hey, the guy who was your mechanic, and he's now running a militia. It really was across the board. When the revolution ended, though, the ones who kind of stayed in power were the ones who were the terrorists and the Islamists. The normal everyday guys were like, oh, I'm going to go join the government. I'm going to join the security services. I'm going to try to join the Libyan army, right? So that was kind of the split. The Islamists and terrorists wanted, a Sharia law. They wanted a very different Libya than actually the Libyan civilians fought for.
Yeah, and did that in a way lead to their own civil war? Because ISIS is the one that ultimately took over, but ISIS is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, as I understand it.
Yeah, it's not exactly how it worked. both ISIS and Al Qaeda were actually aligned then. So this is the war kicked off in 2014, and the war was actually against General Khalifa Haftar. He ran the Libyan National Army. It's not Libya never created an army. They actually paid terrorists and militias to fight for them. So he's the opposition to the government of Libya. So he's the one that said, if I don't go into Benghazi and wipe these terrorists out, we're going to become a terrorist state. He went into Benghazi, started the Second Libyan War, and he fought ISIS and Al Qaeda. So at the time, the two groups fought together against Haftar.
Yeah. It's something that I liked about the film, and this is what's important to note, is when you and the GRS team are going to the consulate and have to basically do street fighting to get to the consulate. Who's who? No one's out here wearing uniforms. That's what I found absolutely terrifying. And anybody that knows anything about what goes on in the Middle East is like, they're not meant to wear uniforms. That's the whole point. They blend in, disappear, use human shields or whatever. But it's like, what? And I think that's how you guys know. It's like, how do we know it's Feb 17? Well, even if they are, how do we know they're not going to shoot us in the back? You know, it's these things that right. Can you tell us, because you said you have a different mindset. Can you explain your mindset, especially as you're on the street? That 1 mile is the most epic mile. It's like, I'm thinking the Mogadishu mile from the Black Hawk Down incident, but it's like, this is a mile to get to the consulate. It's like the danger was in every corner. What was the mindset then?
Sure. For us, all of us are tactically mature. You know, we've come from careers within the military and in law enforcement. So we have a higher level of processing information, if you will. We come from places to where everyone has a gun. Not everyone's a threat, to where no one really wears a uniform. So that's normal. So what we're really looking for is temperament, intent, body language, aggressive actions. That's what we're looking for. But it is chaotic because you don't know. Everybody looks the same. There's not a standard uniform like there would be with like a near peer army or something like that. So it is chaotic, but we're able to remain calm, process the information we see, and then look for that those target indicators, that body language, that temperament, intent, those aggressive actions with those weapons. Because there were a lot of people there who had weapons who weren't terrorists, you know, who weren't aggressive at all. They were friendlies, and then there are others who weren't.
Yeah, it's like an open carry block party.
Right.
Because that's what it looked like. It's like, dude, how can you tell who's who? I guess this kind of stems from a question that I asked Oz when I had him on, because I asked, like, because he wasn't at the annex when it all went down. He was with a staffer out in the city. Then he had to come back, but a good thing too, because he helped at least get the annex start getting secure, because they're going to come for us next. But I'm without a doubt he would have gone too with you guys. But my thing is, why did you go though, knowing that it's just going to be maybe 6 of you, 5 of you, and a translator to go? You can't tell friend from foe. You know that you're going to into a war zone, basically. What was the impulse to keep you going to say people you don't know?
Well, they're Americans. I mean, we would do that anywhere, you know, for any American. And then actually taking a step further, I mean, we would have done that for anyone, not just Americans, if they really needed that help. But these were fellow Americans that we actually did have a relationship with. You know, we would eat dinner with them every Wednesday. So we knew them. They were our colleagues. They were our friends. There was no way we weren't going to go.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know. I mean, he told you at the beginning when he gave you his bio, but Boon was diplomatic security, services, right? So that's like him as a junior officer, right? Like that was him 10 years prior over at the consulate. Like, he would want someone to come save him in that situation, or at least back him up. They didn't know what they're getting to, of course, on the way over. But that it is the right thing to do. But that's how we treat, like he said, any allies overseas. If the French had the problem, if the Italians had the problems, if the Brits had the problems, Emiratis, etc., the U.S. would try to do their best to support.
And that's something that briefly touches in the book in the timeline. And I do think it's in 13 hours and Under Fire as well. But we did respond to the Brits as well a month earlier, when their convoy was hit the RPG.
Yeah, I do remember reading that. Yes. Read 13 hours, folks. If you saw the movie, the book is even more dramatic. I'm like, wow, Michael Bay wasn't as dramatic as the book. But yeah, there's some stuff there crazy. So when I posed that question to Oz, you said the same thing you said and added to it. It's like, hey, look, if you see someone on the side of the road that needs help with a spare tire, you'll pull over and help. Yeah, except that if you knew you did that, not only would you be fired, you'll lose your entire livelihood because of it. That's like the different scenario that it was for you guys, because in the conversation I had with him, it was more like into the world of GRS, something that wasn't truly explored or understood, because like mercenaries, just gun for hires. No. Private contractors not having access to the same resources as a wounded warrior in public service would, because he was wounded, which is why he started Shadow Warriors Project. But with that mindset, it saddens me, and how many, because what I do in social media, also seeing and having to highlight and put out what's happening in our cities. Someone needs help on the side of the road, and no one comes by to help. What you're reflecting is, to me, I feel it's a dying virtue, that it's like more people should to look at what happened, because you guys had a stand down order. 3 guys broke cover. So, all right, we're going to tell our story, because yes, we were told to stand down, because the government said, no, there was no stand down order. But in the footnote, we're going to say, yeah, but we did delay them. It's like, so how is that not a stand down order? Because that's the reason this whole thing is a political football. Because it's like, okay, so who gave the stand down order? Where did it stem from? Did it come all the way from the State Department? Was it the station chief? And that's what nobody wants to touch on, which is why I try to bury this story. And basically, as soon as Oz, Tig, and Tonto came out, basically character assassination against them, because they broke cover. It's crazy. And at the time, you said you were still working for the CIA,
Right.
So you, until relatively recently, came out, but I never seen you on doing any press tours or anything of the sort. Which is why when I saw the book cover, I was like, oh snap! So he's out of the shadows. What? Sarah, because I believe that you have the lion's share of the book, as I'm understanding it. And what prompted you to bring Boon, and Boon? What prompted you to be like, you know what? Let me be a co-author on this to tell this story, or to tell the rest of the investigation.
Yeah, I mean, we'd already been working together on Benghazi related content. We weren't sure it was going to be a book or not, but we actually started working on a kind of our own investigation kind of before Trey Gowdy's committee, just because all the committees had done such a bad job. When we kind of diverted to the attackers, we were both kind of on board immediately when we had the discussion, like, hey, let's just make the focus going after the terrorists. And we've been doing that together since 2015. When you go back to kind of talking about integrity and doing the right thing, you get a lot of that in the CIA, and you have those type of people, right? Like we're the kind of people, we're going to do the right thing. We know it's going to work out for us. It's just when you do the right thing, it only helps you, right? We can go get jobs anywhere. We don't have to kiss someone's butt to keep a job somewhere or appease somebody, right? So more people just need to kind of know their value, right? Know, hey, they're lucky they have me working for them.
Yeah, and honestly, Sarah, based on a lot of stuff I've even heard you speak, I must say I never thought I'd have to say this for someone from a 3-letter agency. But the fact that you haven't given up on this, and you're trying to make this public, well, you are making it public because you published a book on it with Boon. I thank you for your service. I never thought I'd be saying that to someone from a 3-letter agency, because right now it's like there's a lot that are just disillusioned, disenchanted. It's like they're not getting anything done, or they're targeting their own people. It's like, for real. And it's sad that a lot of perceptions out there, but you giving me hope that there's you, and I hope there's a lot more like you within the agency working, because it's called a cold case investigation, because 10 years later we still haven't brought the perps to justice. And like you said, they're out there still killing people, and some of them could be Americans, and nothing is being done. In the book, I think I heard you say in the shooting podcast, I have a full name here, that was a pretty long title, the Shooting Straight Radio podcast. I think you mentioned there's some pictures in this book, so you put the attackers' faces on the book.
Oh, we have Every attacker we highlight in the book, we include their photo. We had to have their photo to include them in the book. That was one of the standards we set for ourselves.
So to talk about that a little more, there are more attackers. The ones that we found, we've actually proven are attackers by one, having a photo of them, two, putting them time and place predictable at the consulate and or the annex. There are a few that we couldn't get a photo of, or we couldn't, without a doubt, positively place them at the annex and or the consulate at the time. So we didn't include them in the book. So there are more, and that's why this isn't an active cold case investigation.
Active. Okay. And you had mentioned also in that same podcast that you did this unclassified. So in other words, this is accessible to the general public.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we wanted it to be our information. We weren't confident the U.S. government would do something, right? So if another government reached out to us and said, hey, can you give me all your photos on bad guy X, we can just send all photos on bad guy X. They're completely unclassified. And we decided to do that from the beginning because, things get locked away in files. Nobody really knows what happens. And when it's a cold case, this whole country should actually care about who these attackers are. And now because we did it this way, we can share it with them and they can actually understand how terrorists work, who terrorists are, how their networks work, how historical the networks are. I think it's going to be a really good lesson to the American public just about how terrorism works, how it's enduring, how, people like Al-Qaeda aren't on the run. They're just patient. They're quiet. They're good at going into hiding. I mean, they really do a good job of doing a lot of things with a hidden hand.
And this really goes far beyond Benghazi. For us, Benghazi's personal, but a lot of these attackers were involved in incidents before Benghazi, and they were involved in incidents after Benghazi on an international level. So this goes far beyond just Libya.
I believe that. And I think your book, I think, is timely, not just because it's the 10th. I still can't believe it's been 10 years.
Right.
I remember when I first started seeing the Wire, because I follow the Wire news. I don't just wait for it to become opinionated, digested news on the main talking heads and all that. So then I was seeing that play out. It's like, oh, that's interesting. It's like, oh man, I can't wait for someone to say this is a YouTube video. So then they wait. So as soon as they started, I'm like, nope, it's not that. But it wasn't until sometime later that we started getting more of the story from the guys that were on the ground. But we're seeing what's happening in our country today, where just people that have a dissenting opinion are being called domestic terrorists, and certain factions of our government, it seems that they're being weaponized against their own citizens. There's a lot of us that feel that way, and your book is timely because, this is what terrorism looks like, and this is the face of evil, of those that are actually committing evil. They're not saying things or using the wrong pronouns against people. They're actually causing physical harm, and they do not discriminate by age or sex or any of that. And I think that more needs to be known about this. I don't have high hopes with certain individuals in power right now that will take this immediately seriously, but the mere fact that it's being documented means it'll be hard to ignore, because people need to know history, that once it's out there, it's out there. You can erase the internet, but you got to collect all these books to burn them if you don't want anybody to know. So I think this is truly an important piece of history. I'm excited to get my book, which is why I said I ordered from two places, because who's going to get here first? I know I can get the ebook, but I prefer the physical, which is why I get these things. So I am looking forward to that. But there's a couple of other things that I want to hit on before we wrap.
I do want to make one point on the ebook.
By all means.
If you love the photos, you want the ebook, right? Because you can zoom in. We have, well over 200 photos inside the book.
Wow.
So it is kind of fun to zoom in. We put some funny ones in for people who can zoom in. We have a very famous terrorist picking his nose. So we put some cute little things in there if you actually zoom in. But regardless, it's a great book, in either format.
You heard it here, folks. Sarah made a picture book for adults.
Yes, remember, my co-author's a Marine. I'm doing my best here.
Right? But there's something to tie it in with respects to. It's kind of reading between the lines. I read between the lines when I read about it when it happened. I'm like, how ironic is that the the militia, if you will, that got the team out of the annex and out of Libya were the so-called enemy. It was Gaddafi's loyalists. Am I right in that?
100%.
And we didn't even know they existed.
Really? So when you saw a convoy of God knows how many vehicles with and tactical and on all that's like, oh snap, who's this?
Yeah, we had zero relationship with them. They were an underground intelligence unit of Gaddafi loyalists. So they were basically in hiding in Benghazi, like collecting info on terrorists and doing those type of things.
Okay.
And they deserve a lot of credit too, because it's just like us helping our fellow Americans. Now here we have Gaddafi loyalists who we helped overthrow, and now, risking their own lives, they came to help us.
And risking their lives after, right? Because people then knew they came and saved us, and now they're stuck in that city, and all the terrorists know, hey, these are who actually helped the Americans get out of the compound.
Holy smokes. I didn't know that part, that you guys didn't know they existed until that very moment. So that's new to me. Wow. So hold on, I'm still processing that. That's crazy. So how did you guys know they were friends? In the film, they had to build the drama. It's like, are they with us or are they against us? And then, the jumbo, like, oh yeah, they're with us. Tonto said, no, I didn't cry. But for the film, it hits home because you get to feel what the relief that I'm sure certain of you felt. But you were still on the roof, if I believe, when the mortars fell.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. We actually had a CT officer who made a phone call to a contact who had a relative who actually was with this underground unit, who actually brought them to our aid. And when they did show up, there was a lot of apprehension because we didn't know who they were. We weren't sure if they were friend or foe. Tonto did use the jumbo to kind of figure out, hey, are these guys going to fire on us or are they not? But at that point, like, we were prepared to go to ground. We were prepared to, if need be, if that large force actually hit us, we knew that was only a matter of time before they would overrun the compound, and then we'd have to go buck wild Zulu in the streets.
Crazy. Because when Glenn Doherty's team arrived, I think it was just a handful of guys, like 2 Delta Force and I forget who else, but he was the only one that went up on the roof. So unfortunately, he and Glenn are the ones that are not with us anymore. But man, their legends live on, honestly. So even then, how many guns would that have meant were on for the Americans? Because there was the DS guys, or the D boys, they're also called. So there were them, but they didn't have the experience that you guys had. So obviously, the more experienced ones, if you will, were about 8 of you. With Glenn and maybe a couple of Delta Force.
So we won't say how many showed up, but it wasn't a lot. So our counterparts, our GRS counterparts from Tripoli showed up. The 2 Delta Force guys that showed up were not sent by DOD. They were just guys who'd work out with the other GRS guys in Tripoli in the gym. They recognized each other. Hey, you're a shooter, we're a shooter. You got that whole bromance thing going on. And when they found out there was a fight in Tripoli, they're like, hey, we're going too. But that was never a DOD response. Those dudes just chose to come.
Okay, because in the film they portrayed that they were tasked with document destruction.
Not at all. No.
Wow.
Document destruction. I can promise you, when FBI went back there, not much was destructed.
Right.
No. They're just other Americans helping other Americans. That's it. On their own.
On their own. Awesome. Yeah, because then that's actually good to know, because that's something that's also didn't know. Now with the one last question with regarding to the book. So Sarah, this is not a retelling of events from your perspective and Boon's, but adding more like who these guys are, like where's Waldo kind of scenario, right?
Yeah, so basically what we do is in the middle of the book, we walk through all the attackers. So we start with the mastermind level. And then obviously, Al-Qaeda senior leadership, right? Because they directed it. Then we go into a chapter that's kind of all the leadership of the different groups and the senior operational commanders on the ground. And then we move into a chapter that's every grunt guy attacker. And you'll just see all them one by one through the book. And there's 99 in just the grunt section. And then there's maybe about 20 in the leadership sections.
Wow. Well, the book is out. It's available on Amazon. You can buy it on Kindle there. Hold off on the hardcover until more information is available. But Barnes and Noble has it both on ebook and hardcover. That's Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy, Cold Case Investigation. Yes, I printed out the cover. But before signing off, and don't hang up because once I'm recording, I have something for you guys. But Boon is you can plug in some of the stuff that you're doing because you're plugging in your book. But I noticed it's called Threat Management Solutions. Is it like a instructor's school for armed civilians, or what is that?
So, I run a training company called Threat Management Solutions, which you can find on shootingclasses.com. And it's just general firearms instruction for everybody. We train a lot of law enforcement and government entities, but we also train the legally armed citizens as well. And it's everything from medical, active shooter response, or just CCW.
Okay, and it's like video stuff, or like written content for people to digest, or just physical classes?
No, this is hands-on physical classes in person. Yes, sir.
Okay, but I think you're on the East Coast because I'm over here on the West Coast, right? Because we're on a different time difference here. How's that work?
The free state of Florida.
State of Florida, yeah. A lot of these TikTok videos of teachers that are messing with kids that are coming from Florida, not from California. So we guys gotta look into that. Too much freedom, maybe. I don't know, but still gotta protect our young. So that's where we'll leave it. Sarah, you're welcome to plug anything else that you might have going on. I seriously, I thank you both for your service to our country. Sarah, I'll leave you both with the last word.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the thing we really want the public to help us with is the fact that the FBI and then the rest of the government have gotten away with not going after the attackers because the public has fallen into the politics of it, right? They joined, hey, we're on the Democrat side, we're on the Republican side of this. We really need the population of the United States to say, hey, we care about the attackers. Like, why are they not brought to justice? You know, it's been 10 years. I don't want to hear about Hillary Clinton anymore. I want you to tell me why Ziad Balam, one of the attackers, is not on FBI's most wanted list. Like, why aren't they on State Department's rewards for justice? He killed an ambassador. Like, that stuff should blow people's minds. They covered it up that much that even the State Department doesn't have these people listed as wanted. And so we want people to go out to their representatives once they learn who the attackers are, because when they learn the attackers, they're going to be like, holy, like, these are badass, you know, mofos. Like, we do not want them coming to the U.S. Because remember, these people aren't watch listed. They can basically get a visa and come straight to the United States and no one's going to do anything about them. So we really want the public to support us in telling the government this matters to us.
Absolutely. And then, you know, not to give anything away, you know, because I want you to go buy the book. But Abu Khatallah is not the mastermind. He wasn't even an attacker. He was a looter. So, yeah. So just for people's background, you know, there was a terrorist arrested by the FBI. And they told the whole United States he was the mastermind of the U.S. consulate attack. And he's in prison right now. I believe he got a 22-year prison sentence. And they're actually about to basically bring him back into court to give him a longer sentence to kind of keep this lie going that he's the mastermind. But he wasn't the mastermind. He showed up to the attacks late. And then he actually waited for Al-Qaeda to leave the consulate compound before he even went in, and then he looted. So that's who the FBI told you was the mastermind. So they didn't have to be honest and tell you it was a senior leader in Al-Qaeda. And that should make everybody pretty worried.
That's awful. And I'm glad that you mentioned it. This isn't political. And yeah, I have my politics. I wear them on my sleeve, but I try to leave this out of it because it's not about that. It's about justice. And one of the main concerns that we have in this country is an open borders policy. As you said, they're not on any watch list, and maybe they have walked in and we wouldn't know. Mm-hmm. And besides, excuse me, this is nothing new because it has happened before in the past 20 years where terrorists were apprehended at the border disguised as Mexicans. Like, that's how easy it is. So it is a concern, especially when we had about 2 million people that's already crossed in the past 18 months or so through the border. It's like, what if? That's why I said this book is timely. People need to wake up. They need to know about this. And whatever shenanigans Amazon is doing, I hope people don't get dissuaded. Barnes & Noble's available. Besides, some of you have issue against Amazon anyway because they're part of big tech. So there's Barnes & Noble. There's no excuse not to get the book. Boon, Sarah, thank you so much. Don't hang up, but thank you so much for joining me on the program. Is there anywhere where people can follow you guys? Boon, I have your Instagram, so I will be adding that to the show notes. But Sarah, is there any social media you'd like to plug in or Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we're both basically doing the updates on the book on Instagram on a page called @Askari Media Group. That's ASKARI. And then, of course, he's DB_Boon, on Instagram. I mean, those are the key places to get them. Yeah, as you quickly noted, Amazon's been doing some price gouging on our book. We think it's just tank it in the rankings. I think they're just trying to sell it for $42. Do not buy our book for anything over $27.99. That's the retail. You can get it in Barnes & Noble. You can go into any local bookstore, hopefully in your hometown, ask them to order it. You can go on IndieBound and get it sent to bookstores in your local town. So, support local. We're coming up to the holiday season anyway.
Amen.
And local businesses have had a rough couple of years.
Amen.
So we do that anyway.
Sarah, seriously, you made a big fan out of me. So thank you. Yeah, definitely support local, folks. And that's where we'll leave it. The Instagrams will be in the show notes. Come this episode at www.thesegovia.com. Once again, thank you so very much. And that's where we'll leave it, folks. We'll see you, or I'll see you on the next one.